Leadership is a common theme in video games. In any RPG where you have a squad of companions, it's certainly going to come up. How do you get people to follow you, and why? Rare are the games where you don't just command a group of friends, but an entire nation. Those games are usually relegated to something like Civilization, games which, generally speaking, don't have much of a story, and even if they do, they're usually something more linear. You've got a goal, make sure your people accomplish it. There is, however, one game that does both, an RPG where you're not just in charge of a squad of friends, but an entire nation, and it comes from the most unexpected of places.
Up for a few rounds of Gwent?
I'm a monster.
Conditions they're giving us now? Son's a horse!
She realized in horror they were human skulls, some no larger than apples.
I shall not fail!
The name's Gimpy Gerwin and I rule these lands.
Is that so?
Don't like this.
Her legs were in leeches, slimy, bloated leeches.
Catch!
These revelations about Keltilus's sect are undeniably fascinating. Discipline shall bring us victory!
Worked out that way, I guess.
You get!
You probably already know about The Witcher 3. It's one of the most famous RPGs ever made. And you probably already know about Gwent, the entire card game that they just threw in there that turned out to be kind of excellent. You might be aware that Gwent got its own spin-off game, an online multiplayer version like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, with slightly adjusted rules to make it more fair for online play. We're 3 spin-offs deep now, so you might not be aware that Gwent also has a spin-off, a single-player RPG using the Gwent gameplay called Thronebreaker. And even if you are aware of that, you might not be aware that it's actually incredible, easily on par with the mainline Witcher games, and in some ways even surpassing them. Thronebreaker might be the spin-off of the minigame of a video game adaptation of a Polish book series, but they didn't half-ass it. They used that relative obscurity to do some really interesting things that I've never really seen any other game try. While the Witcher games are famous for their morally complicated choices, those choices are generally saved for the big moments. Thronebreaker's scale and design means that every single choice, big or small, is a difficult one. Every single choice affects hundreds, if not thousands of lives. So let's talk about Thronebreaker and the burden of leadership. In Thronebreaker, you take control of Meve, Queen of Lyria and Rivia, known across the lands for her beauty, honour and ferocity on the battlefield. During an invasion from the southern empire of Nilfgaard, her son and nobility conspire to seize the crown and surrender to Nilfgaard because they know it's something she'd never do, and the game follows her as she attempts to mass an army and retake her throne. Gameplay is split into 3 separate parts. The most obvious part is the Gwent part. Whenever there's a battle in the story, it plays out as a round of Gwent, with the cards representing parts of Meve's army. There's also these world segments where you walk between places in a way that's not necessarily representative of reality, but more like those map moments in Indiana Jones, showing a long journey in a condensed way. And finally, there's dialogue and story moments that either play out on a separate dialogue screen or in these storybook moments narrated by that same guy from The Witcher 3.
A peasant cart, loaded with a heap of hay, came rattling down the road from the opposite direction.
Clear the road!
Bellowed Count Caldwell, standing in his stirrups.
Make way for your queen!
The peasants obediently turned their cart into the roadside nettles.
While the game might look much simpler than its 3D action-adventure counterparts, Thronebreaker is equally as complex as those games, and all 3 systems are much more in-depth and involved than you might think. Each of them is tailor-made to make the RPG elements of the game as interesting and in-depth as possible. Your choices in dialogue will affect the world map, your choices on the world map will affect your options in combat. Everything matters, everything is connected. Meve is about as noble as you can get for a monarch, but what exactly does nobility mean in a world like this? A world at war, no less. Maybe it's more noble to let prisoners go free instead of executing them, but guess what? You're leading an army who've been exiled from their homes by these prisoners. They're out for blood, and they're going to be pretty pissed if you just let them walk free. Sometimes a quick hanging is just what you need to motivate the troops. This is represented in-game by a morale symbol showing the general feeling of your army, and depending on what happens in the story it can be either positive, negative, or neutral. If it's positive, then all your cards in the next battle will have their power boosted, but if it's negative, then their power will be reduced. If your army doesn't believe in you, they're not going to fight as hard and the battle is going to be more difficult. Almost every decision in the game will affect your troops' morale, but it's not quite as simple as do the good thing or do the thing your soldiers will like. For most of the game, you're a queen without a country. These soldiers are following you simply because they believe in you, and soldiers will be motivated if they believe that they're fighting for a noble cause. If you send them to ransack farms and steal from innocents, then that will demotivate them just as much as showing mercy to your enemies. But this is war, and how your troops are feeling isn't the only thing you've got to worry about. There are 3 resources in the game: gold, wood, and recruits, which are equally dispersed among the 3 elements of gameplay. Usually, doing the right thing isn't free, it's going to cost you some of these resources. And these resources are how you get new cards, upgrade your cards, and even expand how big you can make your deck. The most powerful cards are going to take a large amount of resources, and by the end of the game, you're going to need them. These background mechanics make every choice in the game more immediately impactful. Even the smallest encounter along the road can be an important decision. If you find out that a farmer has nursed a dying Nilfgaardian soldier back to health, then sure, it's not very noble to drag him out of bed and execute him in the street, but your soldiers are in the red right now and they could really use some motivation before the next big fight. It's these moments where Thronebreaker has you considering and sometimes even choosing options that you would never choose otherwise that show its strength as an RPG. It's never a matter of good or evil. In fact, the game specifically draws attention to this. Whenever there's a big decision in the game, you get the message, you've chosen one evil in favour of another. The game never presents you with one good choice and one bad choice. Meve is handed nothing but bad hands, and it's up to you to decide which hand is worse. Every decision hurts someone. It could be you, and if you were an individual like Geralt of Rivia, then that would be the noble thing to do. But usually it's not you in the traditional sense. Hurting you really means hurting the hundreds of people following you. Helping to slay a dragon that's assaulting a town is the noble thing to do, but a bunch of your troops are definitely going to die fighting a dragon. Is it still worth it? All of these decisions can be further complicated by some of the specialists within your army. Much like a traditional RPG, you can end up with a party of followers who join your ranks. In-game, these people are represented by powerful cards that can be make or break for any battle. However, they're not quite a party like a traditional RPG party, because every single decision can be a deciding factor on whether they actually stay in your army or not. Only 2 characters are actually essential to the story: your ever-faithful general and advisor Raynor Dodo, and the bandit leader who joins you and frees you from prison after the coup, Gascon, the Duke of Dogs.
We shan't pass this way.
Oh, Raynor, whatever would we do without you? Plummet off the cliff like lemmings, no doubt.
Everyone else in this tent is expendable, and if you make a decision that they disagree with, they'll just leave and take their extremely valuable card with them. The clearest of these is Sir Ike of Denseal, a noble, monster-hunting knight who follows the good book's teachings. He'll join you if you agree to help him slay a manticore. Seems simple enough. And Ike is an exceptionally useful card. Especially when fighting monsters, he gains power every time an ally is damaged, which means he can easily skyrocket and win an entire round by himself. Except, Ike is no hypocrite, and if he believes you're not following the teachings of the good book, then he'll leave your army. That dragon from before, yeah, you may hesitate to fight a dragon, but Ike won't. He charges right in, and if you don't follow him, then he's definitely going to die.
Smother your fears, Sir Dwarf.
Ake proclaimed. Without waiting for Mee's reply, he dropped his lance and galloped headlong towards the burning city.
Follow me! Slay the Viper!
That's easy enough. Being noble pleases the noble knight. But what about when you get to the dragon's lair and find it injured and dying, explaining that it was only attacking the village because they poisoned her and destroyed her eggs, her children? Killing the dragon no longer seems like such a noble act. But the good book says that dragons are monsters, and no monster shall be spared the wrathful smiting that the good book doth proclaim. If you spare the dragon, then Ike will leave. And is Ike really worth a completely clean conscience? I mean, the dragon's dying anyway, right? May as well? On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Black Rayla. Black Rayla is a special forces soldier of a separate kingdom's army, but she joined you for a while as you proceed through war-torn Idern. Like Ike, she is an exceptionally powerful card to have because she has the ability to summon any card you want and play it from your deck. She's also a gigantic racist.
Non-humans you despised immensely, I believed.
They don't bother me a bit. Long as they stay in their lands, seek fortune nowhere else. I detest only those who infest our cities, humbly insist on belonging to our guilds, holding office in our institutions, armies.
Yet some find a place for themselves, blend in marvellously.
It's never lasting. They're different, odd. Strain's inevitable. And then they'll always stab a human in the back.
Most people in the world of The Witcher hate elves, but Black Rayla really hates elves. In battle, she literally gains power every time an elf dies, and that would be pretty off-putting if she wasn't also right most of the time. The Scoia'tael, named for the squirrel tails they wear, are a faction of elves and other non-human races who fight for freedom and liberation. That's a noble goal, but it just so happens that the Scoia'tael view the Geneva Conventions as a guidebook, and commit some of the worst atrocities you can find in the entire game. Like the street with soldiers stuck to it where bugs come and eat them from the inside out while they're still alive. Or the village where they rounded up all the humans, including the children, into a mill and burned them alive. The Scoia'tael don't mess about, and as you play through, you can quickly understand why Black Rayla feels the way she does, especially since she is an expert. She's been fighting them for years and she knows all their tricks. Rayla will leave your army if you show mercy to the Scoia'tael, because as far as she's concerned, they don't deserve any. When you find their secret field hospital in a cave, what are you gonna do? I mean, sure, it's a bit of a war crime to slit their throats while they can't fight back, but when Rayla says that they wouldn't hesitate to do the same to you, it's pretty clear from what you've seen so far that that's true. It's not actually a matter of telling Rayla what to do, it's telling her what not to do. If you don't stop her, she will kill them all. They're far from innocent civilians, but does that mean you should let Rayla murder them? Are you better than that? Or, better question, can you afford to be better than that? Is that kind of battlefield mercy worth it, considering the consequences it could bring to your army? Of course, if you manage to keep Rayla on side, she doesn't magically stop being a massive racist. Later on, when you encounter a much more sympathetic group of Scoia'tael, a group of idealistic dwarven youths, the ideal outcome is to return them to their people where they'll be dealt with by their own authorities. But if you still have Rayla along with you, then she'll sneak into the prisoner carriage and slit their throats, because the Scoia'tael deserve no mercy. Murdering the children of the people you're trying to secure an alliance with is not a great look, and more so, pretty much everyone in your army will see this as an unrepentantly awful thing to do. The usually stoic Reynard has to fight to keep himself from exploding with rage, and the hippie witch Isabel will leave your army if you don't punish Rayla for it. Still think Rayla is worth it? She might well be a badass, but she's also a massive liability. She herself is proud of what she's done, and why wouldn't she be? After all, in order to get here, you had to support all her war crimes she committed before this. Why is this time any different? Thronebreaker doesn't have any sort of morality counter. There's no score at the end that determines if you've been a good queen or a bad queen. And that means there's no punishment for being a hypocrite sometimes. The true burden of leadership is compromise. Ike and Rayla can stay true to their beliefs no matter the outcome. But as a queen, you don't have that luxury. Sometimes staying true to your ideals isn't worth the outcome. Sometimes a guilty conscience is a price worth paying. Sometimes you just have to think about the greater good. There's an old bit of common wisdom. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I've never found that to be entirely true. A more accurate version of that idea is power reveals. When someone gets the power to enact change, you'll see the changes that they always wanted to make, good or bad. Thronebreaker, in its own way, is trying to put you in that position. It's trying to get you to reveal yourself. What's the more important focus? Enacting the change you want to make, or keeping the power to do so? The life of a queen during wartime is one of schemes and betrayals. Trust is not a luxury that you can afford. The game presents you with many opportunities to rescue someone or help them out of a situation, and in another game that might just be that. But this is war. Not everything is as it seems. When you stumble across a village where an elf is being executed for crimes he claims he didn't commit, the noble thing to do is stop the execution. When he pleads with you to take him with you, as they'll surely try again once you leave, the noble thing to do is take him with you. Well, when it turns out that he actually is a bastard and your soldiers start dying of poison, that can be a real revelatory moment. Just because someone's situation is dire and they need your help doesn't mean that their intentions are pure. Will you let that truth break you? Will you let it stop you from helping the next stranger you pass? Will it reveal that your altruism only extends as far as you think you can benefit from it? Maybe the next time you come across someone being stoned for crimes they claim to be innocent of, you'll just walk right on past. Altruism is a luxury that you can't afford. Traitors and deception are common, sure, and even if plenty of these situations aren't as they appear, some of them are, like a group of Nilfgaardian soldiers being swarmed by monsters. They're the enemy, it's probably dumb to join the fray and help them, but it is a noble thing to do. Even your enemies don't deserve to be torn to shreds by monsters, do they? Helping those soldiers turns out to be completely beneficial. They're actually a group from a kingdom long conquered by the Empire, and they'll happily join your ranks. No deception, no betrayals. It's not so simple as the idea that helping people never pays off. It's just that you can never know if helping someone and trusting them will pay off or not. Trust is always a gamble. That's the leader's dilemma, because not only does trusting in someone who turns out to betray you hurt the people following you, it also makes you look like an idiot, a weak leader who doesn't know when someone is lying to them. Hand in hand with trust is mercy, sparing prisoners, letting people live. It's always the more noble thing to do, sure, but the game doesn't shy away from the fact that mercy is something that a lot of people can and will take advantage of. A determination that you have to make for yourself is the value of executions. Having a reputation of not showing mercy is a distinct tactical advantage, and as a guerrilla army constantly on the move, you don't really have the resources to be taking prisoners. While it might be easier if your enemies fought to the bitter end, like the Scoia'tael do, most of your enemies will get on their knees and beg for their lives after you defeat them. When you discover a river running red with the blood of an entire village, killing the man who did this is obviously the right thing to do. But when you find him, he gets on his knees and pleads. He killed those villagers because they killed his son. Does that justify his actions? And moreover, does having a justification even matter when not killing him at this point would show your army that you don't have the heart to follow through with your convictions? Or how about a turncoat, a local lord who immediately started flying Nilfgaardian flags and sending his detachment against his own country? He's not evil, he was scared, and he was genuinely doing what he thought was best for his men. He's still a traitor and definitely not trustworthy, but does he deserve death for it? Maybe just because someone is begging for their life doesn't mean that they actually deserve to live. Or, more accurately, maybe you can't afford to let them live. What about when it's not enemy combatants? What about innocent civilians caught up in the realities of war? Hitting a Nilfgaardian lumberyard is a strategic move. It'll slow down production of their ships and war machines. But what about the regular working Joes who rely on those wages to live? When they beg you to leave the woods so they don't starve, what are you gonna do? What's more important, the battle or the war? There's no punishment for being inconsistent. Every decision can be judged on a case-by-case basis. Maybe you decide that one person gets mercy when another person who committed similar crimes doesn't, just because of the circumstances. That's the benefit of being in charge. You get to make decisions based on whatever criteria you think is fitting. Maeve will always come up with an explanation that seems reasonable enough. Speaking of Maeve, she is, on top of all of this, still a person. And that's the final burden of leadership. Where does the person begin and the leader end? And in the case of a queen, is there even any difference at all? Maeve is a character who's quite easy to like and very easy to root for. Of all the monarchs shown in the Witcher series, she's easily the most competent and definitely the most noble. The kings of the north are a bunch of incestuous, bickering idiots, where Maeve at least actually seems to care about the people of her kingdom. She's a queen who leads from the front, in full armour, sword in hand. She's not much of a strategist, she leaves that to her advisors. But she is an extremely accomplished fighter. She's not quite a noble knight like Ike, she's far too jaded and world-weary for that. She'll do what she has to do to reclaim her kingdom, no matter what dark place that might take her. Lyria and Rivia are obviously better in her care than in Nilfgaard's, what with it being a slave state and all, so no matter what you decide, the end goal of reclaiming your throne is a noble one. Where things can get complicated for a queen are where things get personal. Her son, Willem, is part of the reason all of this started in the first place, when he and the noble lords betrayed her and surrendered to Nilfgaard's rule. But Willem isn't evil, he's being manipulated, or at least he is at first, by the lords, and specifically by a guy called Count Caldwell, who you throw out a window halfway through the game. But what to do about Willem? Late in the game, he comes for you, now King Willem, and offers to pledge himself to you, provided that you secure the safety of him and his men and keep the reforms he's made as king. Willem is only 17. He's young, idealistic, and easily manipulated. He's a traitor, but he's not evil. Should Maeve accept his return? It's not exactly that easy of a decision, because this far in the game you've likely killed people for less heinous crimes than the one Willem committed, and yet, he's her son. That does matter, and there's no way around it. As a queen, the correct answer is to punish Willem for his treason. As a mother, it can't ever be that simple. He's a good kid, and he's got the potential to be a great king someday. All you have to do is forgive him for seizing the throne and bending the knee to an invading empire of slave drivers. For me, it's always been a surprisingly easy choice, considering. Willem deserves that second chance. Let mother and son be reunited. It's hypocritical, sure, but reality doesn't actually punish you for being a hypocrite. It's one of the major pluses of being in charge. One that most monarchs are very happy to abuse. And that's the thing, isn't it? Being queen is easy if you don't actually care about anything or anyone but yourself. It's trying to do good with the power that you've been granted that makes these decisions difficult. Leadership only has burdens if you care about the consequences. Thronebreaker's talent isn't making you care, it makes you feel the weight of these decisions and lets you make some really, really wrong ones and face the consequences. And the result is a game that offers a more thorough examination and exploration of leadership than any other game I've played. Thronebreaker is a very strange game. It has the subtitle The Witcher Tales, like there was supposed to be many Witcher Tales, but as of right now this is the only one, and it seems like it will always be the only one. It's a weird idea, a completely serious 30-hour campaign based around Gwent, the silly card game. And yet, it just works. It all comes together to tell a very different story from the Witcher games, but an equally interesting one.
And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here or get access to exclusive Patreon videos, then you can find that link in the description below. Or wait for the magic Patreon box. I took too long on that sentence. I have plenty other videos that you might be interested in, like this video I just made about Starfield's main campaign and what it's, like, about and all that. Or for something different, why not this video about unpacking an indie game that you should go and play, because it's very good.